All right, so we're just going to explore a little bit of the main interface here. We started this in class, but I wanted to make a video because we didn't have time to go over a lot of it. We'll just kind of explore some user interface, some text, some buttons, attach our first scripts. So I'm just going to create my first Unity project here. It's going to be in 2D. Okay, I have just some starter code up here that I'm going to borrow from. And that's all in the Google Slides for the class. So here's our first project, okay? I'm going to switch this over from services to inspector window here. This is my slower laptop, so it's running pretty slow. But I'm going to start up just, so the main camera, if we go to the scene view, we can see where this camera is. This is just like a video camera in real life. So even though the world can be very large, or the world space, we can point the camera wherever we want. So we choose what to film and at what angle and so on. Now it's 2D. We're not going to be dealing with angles and rotation and stuff that we'll do 3D in second semester. So first things first, hopefully you already did the classwork where you're importing an image as a sprite, because we're just going to go right into the user interface stuff. So up here, I'm going to create a new game object. I'm going to do a user interface. Let's create a text. Now I'm going to go over to my game view because I want to see what this looks like. So I'm going to bring this to 0, 0. So got it right here. I can choose the size. I can, let's change this to say hello world. Down here, you can change the font. You can change the size. Now you can always in all of these, grab them, just like the X and the Y, to move something left and right, up and down. It's only moving slightly because it's in decimals there. But I could do the same thing with size. However, if you make it too large, it disappears. And that's because you need to change your height and width to match. So maybe I want to change my height to be my width to be 300, my height to be 100, and then I can go even larger if I want, right? But at some point that disappears because it doesn't fit anymore. So you can play with that as much as you want, okay? So we've got a text. That's a game object here. It goes under canvas. This is where all the user interface or UI elements go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to create another game object. Let's make a user interface button. Okay, now this button, we could go up here and we could choose where to put it in the screen. I think it's Control Shift, then chooses I can put it in, no, it's going to be Alt Shift. There we go, Alt Shift, and when you click on these, it brings it right to there. Now I'm going to set it right there in the center, so it's at right now 0, 0. I'm going to move it up a little bit. Let's say it's at, instead I want my button at, I don't know, let's go there. Now let's go there. Okay. So there's my button right now. I can click on my button, and under the button, as a child of that, it does have a UI text element. So I could change what's written on the button. So I'm going to say, I'm going to change this to print hello. Okay. Now I want to create a script. Oops. I want to create a script on this button that actually prints hello. So here's a console, just like in our C# practice so far. You could do console.writeLine. However, in Unity, instead we're going to use the debug log, and that's a way while we're programming to go back and check, like how many lives does my character have? What's its position? Where are these things connected, or colliding? So whatever you want to test in your code, you can have it print on the console or by using debug.log, and that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so over here in project, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this scripts. And I want to create a script in here. Okay, in here I'll go, I want a new C# script. Okay, let's call this game controller. And then what I want to do up here is I want to make a new game object. I'm just going to make an empty, and I'm going to rename this game controller. So this is what's going to run the script that is in control of this screen here. Okay, it's going to make the decisions for us. It's going to hold the code for our buttons, things like that. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to open this up and put some code in there. And then I want to attach it to my game controller. And I could just drag it over and put it on there, because the game controller script and game controller game object are two different things. So I'm going to drop the C# script in there. Okay, now if I click on Game Controller over here under what components it has in the inspector window, you can see it has a script. It has the Game Controller script already attached to it. Now that's empty as is. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to put a function in. Okay, so going in here, we'll talk more about what these do, but basically start as soon as the scene loads, start run. So this could be to set some values, to position things. There's even awake that could go before that. We're not going to use that right now. We could delete it, but I'll leave it there. And update as well as fixed update are things that happen either every frame or every so many frames. And that's things you continuously want to update, like position, velocity, force, things like that. Okay. So what we're actually going to do in here is we're going to make a new method. And the method is going to be what the button actually clicks on. So I've got some starter code in the slides. And so what you could do is you could just come over here and you could grab it. And so debug.log is what's going to print hello. Again, you could use console.writeline, but we're going to choose this. So we just want to go in here and we just want to make a new function. Okay, so let's just make a public void. We can call it whatever we want. But again, since we're printing hello, we're going to say, okay, yeah, let's call it print hello. That's a really clear name. We're not putting in any input. And then what we're going to do is create a little space to enter some code. And so we're just going to say debug. And if you were to mess up on capitals, it usually fixes that for you. Not always. It's best to know, or to get that right the first time. But it will fix a lot of that for you here. So now we've got our debug.log printing hello. Now that's not actually going to run with the button yet, but at least we've got our method there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control S to save this, or you could go up to File and Save. It's grayed out because I just did it. Okay. And now I'm going to minimize this and go back to Unity. Okay. And now I want to attach it to this. However, the way we're going to do that is we're going to say, okay, on my button, down here, there's an area that says on click. And right here, this is interactable, so the button can be clicked. And so on click, nothing's happening right now. So what I want to do is I want to say something does happen. And now I'm going to choose, and it says right here, an object. Now you could either click here and select it, or I just like drag and drop. So I'm going to say I want the object that it accesses to be my game controller. I'm going to put that right there. And now this has access to all of the code in Game Controller. So I'm going to go down here to Game Controller and I'm going to choose. And there's some default ones, but there's our print hello that we made. Okay, so now I can actually run my game. Let's go run the game. And now it's running. And when I print hello or click print hello, it should print in our console window. So print, and there we go. Hello, hello. And we can make it say whatever we wanted, obviously. But that's how you'll use that debug log to write to the print screen, okay? So we've got a functional button now, okay? What else could we have our button do? Well, we could change this text, okay? So let's stop running the game. Let's go back to our button. And actually, you know what? We want to change the method that's getting accessed when we click the button. Now, to do that, we need to go back over here. Whoops, I'm clicking on the wrong thing here. Sorry. To do that, let's open back up our script. Oh, it was hidden behind my little record at the bottom of the screen. So up comes monodevelop, and here is a new function. Okay, so we want to do public void, and I don't know what we want to call it. Let's call it change text. Whoops, text to hello. Okay, and now what we need to do is we need to somehow access that text because it's a whole different object, right, or game object. So we don't have access to it right now. Now you could include it up here text-wise, but instead I like doing drag and drop. But right now we don't have anywhere to drag and drop. So what we need to do, and here's the starter code again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a public field, okay? Now, what element is it? It's a text. But by saying it's public, I'll show you what that does, and we can call it whatever we want. Okay, so up here, I'm going to say I want public text. Well, I was going to copy and paste it to save time, but okay. So public text, and again, usually if you miss that capital, it fixes it for you, but that time text became texture, so it's not perfect. Okay, and let's call it UI or let's call it my UI text. Okay? Okay. So now what I want to do is go down here and I want to say, okay, so I'm going to change the text to, I said hell. Let's change it to hello. And so down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this text element here and I'm going to say, okay, so my UI text element, I'm going to change its text to be equal to whatever I want. Let's say woohoo. Okay. Now, as long as I can connect this text to the desired text on my screen, it will change the text of that game object to be this. Now, one last thing I forgot. I was searching around, I was confused with what I was missing here. I forgot to include, if we're going to be dealing with these UI elements and actually changing one from the other, what we need to do is we need to do using the Unity Engine's UI. So using Unity Engine.UI. Okay, and now we have access to that. So now let's save it. Again, Control S does that. Let's go back over here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay. So on this button, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to add, oh, I already did it when I was troubleshooting. So I'm going to add my game object. And so now my new button, I've got my changes text button. On click, I want to drag over the game controller. And I want to say game controller. Changed text to hello. Now the thing is when I do that, it doesn't know what text I want to deal with. So what I need to do is I need to set which text I'm dealing with. Okay, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to go over to game controller where we wrote the method, right? It's in our game controller script. And so we click on game controller. And, or, I mean, you could do it actually on the script. It's fine either way. And now there's a public field, my UI text, and it's empty right now. So it doesn't know what text that, let me switch over, that this is pointing to. You said I have a public one. That's why we're able to access it and change it from this menu. It creates a blank where you can drag and drop in. That's what public does. If we were to change this to private, and then I were to save this, that usually gets either grayed out or disappeared. I can't remember which is which. And so it disappears. And so I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to switch it back to public. We'll save it. And now this will reappear. And so what I want to do is I want to tell it which text I want to change. So I want to change this text, and let's even rename this so it's really clear. This is my Hello World Text UI, okay? So I've got that game object, and I want to say, okay, so on my game controller, which has that same field, or on the game controller script itself, I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it over and drop it there. So now it knows the text element that we're going to be changing is the text element Hello World Text UI. So now when I run my game, I'm going to click Change Text, and it will change that to woohoo. And we could, of course, go in there and change whether it's centered, its size, its color, its font. So that's a way to get that up and moving. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to actually add, with this little bit of extra time here, I'm going to go through the last slides and really quickly just show you how you would change scenes. But that's how you would actually get the text working with an on click, okay? So right now, let's do really quickly. Let's do save this scene. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to have to go down to assets, and I'm going to create a folder called scenes. Okay, so here let's call this one just real quick. We could call this main menu, but for now, I'm going to go really quickly. I'm just going to say let's call this scene 1. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and, well, before we do that, let's just create a new scene. Let's call this one scene 2. Now, if we want to be able to switch between these, say main menu and instructions and, gameplay, like level 1, things like that, what we need to do are a couple things. Okay, first, let's create a button that will take us there. Obviously, there are other things, other buttons that could change that. But in scene 1, which we're in right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another UI element button. Okay, I'm going to change its Y position to be negative 80. Nope, negative. Let's go with 100. And then we could just adjust a little bit. Now I could, get specific with the coordinates, but that's good enough. Let's go to its child text, and let's change that to go to scene 2. Okay, now again, we need some script, a method to deal with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to our game controller, and I'm going to add public void, and I'm just going to say change to scene 2. Okay, empty. And now there's two things you need to do. You need to tell it to load scene, and you need to include scene management. So again, I give you starter code in the slides. So we're going to do Unity Engine.scene management. So using Unity Engine.scene management, semicolon. And then down here, we'll do scene manager dot load scene. And that will load whichever scene we want. Now you have to type in exactly the name. So let's do, we want to load scene 2. Now what I'm going to do is, because I want to be able to switch back, I'm just going to copy and paste this and change to scene 1. And this will load scene 1. Now obviously we could do this better, where it could be select a level and they could have numbers and you could index this. But this is a really nice, easy way to start. So this will go to scene 2 and this will go to scene 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to go back to my program and say, all right, so I want to attach that to here. Again, game controller already has access to that. So all I need to do is give my name a button, or give my button a name. Let's just change. This is my print hello. So I already got confused. So here is my one that is go to scene 2. So I'm going to rename this button go to scene 2. Okay, really simple name. All right, so now with this button, what I need to do is on click, tell it what to use. So I'm going to take the game controller game object, put it right there, and I'm going to select the method change to scene 2. Now there's something really important you need to do. Now if I try and run this right now, you'll see that when I click this, I get an error at the bottom of the screen. Oh, I got my screen a little high, so let's move it down. At the bottom of the screen here, you see the error. Scene 2 couldn't be loaded because it has not been added to the build. So you haven't told, when I build this app, what worlds, what scenes you want me to include. Because obviously you might have worked on 10 and you only want to build the first 2 the first time, or there's just some practice ones you aren't including. So what you need to do is, let's stop running the game. Let's go up to build settings and say, in my world, in my game, what scenes do I want? Well, I want a scene 1 and I want a scene 2. And order matters. The top one is, you could think of it as the main menu, or the one it loads up with, okay, or the intro. So now that they're there, I could just close this and say, okay, so now that they're in there, that'll go to scene 2, but then it's a dead end. So what I want to do before I load that is I want to go to scene 2. Oh, let's save that. Thank you, Unity. So let's go to scene 2. I'm going to just really quickly add a UI button, and that button will be go to scene 1. And then what I want to do is on the button, I'll say on click. I want to use, I forgot. We need to add a game controller because this new scene starts blank, right? So what you need to do is add, let's just create an empty. Let's rename it to game controller. Okay, and then I'm going to use the script that I've already got saved. So now my game controller exists in both scene 1 and scene 2. And then on my button, I'm going to say, you know what? I want to use the game controller, and I want to use the method under game controller that is change to scene 1. Okay, so I'm going to save this with Control S, and now I'm going to go to run. Oh, sorry, let's go back to when I build it, it would go to scene 1 first, but let me save this and actually load up. Otherwise, it's just running this scene, so you can practice either scene by itself. So let's open scene. Go to scene 1, and that's what we wanted to run. I could have obviously clicked it too, but this was the main menu. Okay, if I click go to scene 2, up comes scene 2. If I click go to scene 1, it switches back to scene 1. So that's how to get some buttons working. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was crazy exciting. Good luck. Woo, can't press pause.